welcome back. I'm not going to lie and tell you that I've been a big Hulk Hogan fan my whole life, because I haven't. But he was a big factor in the growth of WWF back in the day. Really, all wrestling. I mean, he had been the biggest, biggest name in professional wrestling at that time and stuff. Myself, I was more of a Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior fan. And as a kid, I don't know if it is like that today, but you have the same guy winning over and over and over. Here recently in the past, like Roman Reigns winning all the time. People get tired of seeing him win. So I got tired of seeing Hulk Hogan win. The very first time I remember watching Hogan was the Andre and Hogan breakup on, I think it was a Piper's Pit. And that's my earliest memory of watching him and leading up to WrestleMania 3, which was, and still is, my favorite WrestleMania of all time. Nothing's ever going to beat that WrestleMania. And every once in a while I'll go back and rewatch it. But yeah, Hulk Hogan passed here recently, just about a week ago. And it was shocking. 71 years old. And I thought that Ric Flair would probably pass away before Hulk Hogan would. I mean, because Flair's had a lot of issues over the years. And Hogan seems to be, I thought, in decent health. You know, at one time, just a few years ago, me and my son was talking. And he said he would like to, he thinks he could, out of all the older ones, could actually come back and still do another match in his 60s at that time. So, yeah, I mean, he seemed to be pretty healthy, but apparently he had some other problems. And I think just recently I saw where he was having surgeries and stuff, and he was having some issues, and they said he couldn't talk or something. And I was like, well, he'll bounce out of that probably. And then just a few days later, it was like, he's dead. And I'm like, wow, really? That's crazy. Also watched him on Hogan's Knows Best. I'm a sucker at that time for reality shows. I watched the Ozzy show and I watched his show. Early 2000s was a lot of that cool stuff like that. You just wanted to see like behind the scenes with people and stuff like that. And I remember him showing off his big old Hulkamania room, and he seemed like he had everything that they ever put out of him, which was cool. He had posters, and he had wrestling figures and all that cool stuff like that. And so I thought that was cool for somebody to actually collect that kind of stuff that was put out of him or whatever. He had a huge room, so I don't know what they're doing with all that, if his son gets it or what they're doing with it. But yeah, it's sad to see another part, I should say, of my growing up childhood wrestling, wrestlers die, because last so many years, there's been so many of them passing away. But a lot of them, a little ahead of time because they were in bad health and stuff. But Hogan was not one of them. He really shocked a lot of people by passing away. But 71 years old, man, it's never know. I always thought it would have been a nice celebration of him in the WWE to have a send-off like some of these other wrestlers, like John Cena right now is doing with, having his farewell tour or whatever they want to call it. And then they would know their last match. Like Ric Flair did have his last match at one time, and that was good. Undertaker has and stuff, maybe, I guess, if he don't come back again. A lot of wrestlers come back because they just can't get it out of their system, I guess. And Hogan did that a lot too, In the early 90s, it started kind of dying out, and a new generation was coming in, and he left and went to WCW and reinvented himself, the NWO, which was all right. I didn't really watch a whole lot of that either. I was into the Attitude Era when it started with Stone Cold and stuff. But every once in a while, I would check it out and stuff. And he did pretty good as a bad guy. There's not everybody can do good as a bad guy. Recently, John Cena trying to be a bad guy, no, it doesn't work with him. Some people can do it and some people can't. But Hogan, he did a pretty good job of pissing off people back then. And then there was people that loved him for being bad and stuff too. Loved him for being that type of guy. And the little boys, the little kids was having to go and find somebody else to cheer for, because he had the black beard thing going on and all that stuff. But he did a lot for wrestling, and if it wasn't for him at that time, that what introduced me to it, him and Andre. Who knows if I'd have started watching wrestling back then or not. I don't really watch it now because I just see bits and pieces here and there. But I was out of it in the 90s for a little while until the Attitude Era came back, and then I actually did get into that for a few years. And then Hogan comes back to the WWE in 2002, which by that time I was kind of getting back out of it again a little bit. 2002, 2003, I wasn't really watching it a whole lot. I'm thinking, damn, is he ever going to retire, Not knowing that, he was probably only in his late 40s, early 50s then, So when he was wrestling when I was a kid, there's pictures where it shows him in his, he's like 32 years old and he's basically almost bald and he just has that hair in the back. And I was like, I didn't know he was that young at that time, and nowadays 32 doesn't seem that old in wrestling, and they look a lot different nowadays, so I didn't know for a long time how old he was. But yeah, he's still definitely going. He's always going to be. Hulkamania will run wild forever, like they always say. And I'm not going to lie and say I loved him to death or anything. I mean, I loved to hate him back then when he was always winning. He was always a good guy, but I had friends that would root for him and stuff. But I do remember getting the LJN figure of him, and I was really excited because I done had like 10 or 12 of them, and I couldn't find Hogan or anything. And then I finally found Hogan and Andre the Giant the same night at a KB store of all places, which that's where back then, we didn't have a Toys R Us or anything. So getting a Hulk Hogan figure back then, and that was the only one at that time. And for a few years, they didn't make like they do now. They make a Hogan every 2 or 3 series. They've got so many of them. But back then, you had that one, and that was it. And I rushed over to my friend's house and showed him, I had Andre and I had Hogan. The next day, he went and got Andre and Hogan. If I could have just remembered to and knew what was coming up now with collecting and stuff years later, I could have went back and got another Andre and another Hogan and kept them on the card, put them in a trunk or something and left them for 40 years. It would have been nice, but you don't think like that when you're a kid. Somebody thinks of it. There's people that do have that stuff out in this world. I don't know how they got it like that, but they do. But yeah, Hogan's going to be missed in the wrestling community. He's been having a lot of tributes this past week. I didn't do this right when he passed away. I just wanted to wait a little bit. And, he's the reason wrestling is where it is today. I got to say that. Whether you love him or hate him, he made a real big boost in the ratings back in the 80s when he won the first WWF championship that he won back in 84. Or was it 83? I think it was 84 when he started doing the Hulkamania stuff. So, yeah, I just want to take a few minutes and share a few memories, of growing up, getting the wrestling figures, watching a little bit of it on TV. When the Ultimate Warrior finally beat him in WrestleMania 6, fair and square, that was one of the first times I ever seen somebody as good as him, like a good guy, get actually beat by somebody. And it was not like they weren't cheating or anything. And I really thought Hogan's career was about over then. Little did I know it still lasted another 20-some years later. So, but anyway, rest in peace, Hulk. You left so many videos to watch on YouTube of Hulk Hogan. You left so much on Peacock to watch on WWE Network. And Hulkamania will live forever.